Thank you to all who are taking the time to watch this presentation. We're going to be talking about lightning protection challenges in the developing world. The co-authors are Mitchell Guthrie, Ronald Holly, and Richard Shimururi from Uganda. One of the things I've learned in working with the African Centers for Lightning and Electromagnetics and with the other lightning safety programs in Bangladesh and Nepal and around the world and in South America as well, is that there is no lightning safety without lightning safe locations for people to go to. If people have no safe locations, it doesn't matter whether they're walking to market, whether they're in their schools as children studying, whether they are sleeping in their homes, they're at risk 24/7, 365. And it's a tremendous challenge to take a look at providing lightning safety for many of these locations. You know, there may appear to be lightning safety when some vehicles and buildings are safe by default. For instance, large buildings with wiring and plumbing, even with no formal lightning protection systems, are reasonably safe, and that's what most of us in the developed world live in. Fully enclosed metal vehicles are safe. Ships, many other structures like that are safe. But those are not available in the middle of Africa or in the middle of Bangladesh rice paddies. Some buildings are safer than others, but it's only relative. Sometimes the risk appears to be minimal because there's very low lightning occurrence. For instance, in the Arctic, you don't expect to be hit by lightning. Sometimes there's a very low population density, so there's really no one around to be injured. Lightning safety the risk is also minimized if people mostly live and work inside safer structures, whether or not they have lightning protection systems. And there is no information on lightning injuries in many countries, so those countries may not even realize that they have a risk. Ron Holly did a wonderful paper back in 2016, and he keeps it updated. This shows the parts of the world that actually have done lightning injury surveys, if you will. The ones with the red are the ones with the highest number of deaths per million population. The orange come next, the yellow come next, as in the United States, with fairly low. All of these white regions do not have studies about lightning injuries. They may have newspaper reports, but they have no real data. So the governments may have absolutely no reason to worry about lightning. There's a paper on this from Nepal. You can see that Nepal used to be one of the white ones, but I think we can color that in now as a result of Sriram's paper. Well, some of the lightning challenges. Lightning standards committees, they're wonderful, but they developed lightning protection standards for the developed world. Even the many countries that are on these standards committees that may come from developing worlds have no real pressure to develop lightning protection for many of the challenges in their own countries. We hope to change that. Many of the products that are recommended by the standards are far too expensive in developing countries for individuals or schools to implement. And I'll show us specific reasons that African schools are even more expensive to protect than in other countries. So are there other alternatives? Can we use cheaper or simpler lightning protection and still be adequate? I'm not talking about cheaping it out and making it unsafe. Can we decrease the cost of design or the cost of installation? You know, in many of these countries, installation also includes, materials purchase is hampered because there may be customs charges of as much as 30–35% on any of the imported materials, because these materials aren't available in many of the developing countries. In addition, you have to transport the materials and you have to pay labor to put them in, often in distant areas where there may be no electricity or internet. Well, ACLE-Net is very proud to, and so privileged to have a wonderful group of lightning protection specialists. Many of these are world-class lightning protection experts. They serve on the international standards committees. They volunteer all of their time. They're from South Africa with real world experience in the developing world, from the US, from Uganda on the ground to help us. And recently Denmark has joined us in 2020. We've been working together since November 2018 with weekly meetings addressing lightning protection challenges that nobody's ever looked at. And hopefully these people will take the information and the knowledge and the judgment that they've gained in the developing world and take it back to the IEC committees, and we'll see some influence on the kinds of standards they come up with. We try to use local materials when possible, and eventually we hope to template the designs to be used across Africa, Asia, and other places that need it. I'll give you a moment to look at the names on this list of the people that are the active members of the working group. I think many of the lightning protection people in the audience will know many of these, may serve on committees with them. Well, let me show you the problems we're looking at. These are homes and businesses in Africa, pictures that I took when on various trips when I was in Africa for meetings from 2013 to 2015. You can see the Zambia countryside. These homes have no electricity or wiring. They are totally unsafe. Other mud brick with metal roofs. These are the kind of shops that line the roads. Even those people who have moved to the city for jobs and things like that may not have lightning safe dwellings. For instance, this is a typical home in Soweto, South Africa. Well, it's not just in Africa. We see it in other developing countries as well. These are pictures I've taken through other countries as I've traveled to them for lightning meetings. This is a newspaper picture, but you get the idea. And often when lightning hits, the thatch catches on fire. And because of the paralysis that people often suffer after a lightning strike is temporary, but it's enough to keep them from being able to escape these structures. So they may burn to death, even if the lightning hadn't killed them. And of course, we've got people who live on boats. That's where their homes are. Or in this reed island, this is a floating island, man-made island of reeds in the middle of Lake Titicaca in Peru. And you know, it's not just people at risk, it's also their livelihoods, their livestock. Often in many of these countries, people still measure their wealth in animals. Bride prices are still paid in animals as well as other goods before a marriage will be recognized by the family. Additionally, we have damage to infrastructure. This substation in Zambia was knocked out in 2016. It served 3 large states in Zambia, and because of trouble repairing it, it was 3 weeks before they had electricity in these areas. Think how you would survive for 3 weeks with no electricity. I don't mean going over to your neighbors for electricity or going to work and charging your phones there. I mean 3 weeks where your food was spoiling, you weren't able to work, you weren't able to communicate. Your data was lost during that period of time. You had no batteries to back it up. So what should we protect and how do we make those decisions, particularly when demand exceeds the capacity? Particularly in rural areas where by default, there are no lightning safe structures. It's impractical to protect every dwelling. And so we have to decide where we can have the most impact when the funds are limited. And believe me, they're limited for ACLE-net. Anybody who wants to donate and help us with this, I would appreciate it. And so would all the kids in Africa we're trying to protect. Well, one of the things that we decided was to protect schools. There's a couple of other articles or manuscripts, papers as part of 10MALD, including investigation of a lightning mass casualty incident in Mongoyo School. Now I'll show you more pictures of Mongoyo in a moment. School children are the most frequent victims injured and killed by lightning. Ron Holly has done a wonderful paper, also part of 10MALD, and I believe part of this session, on lightning occurrence and casualties in Uganda. These schools are not protected. They are not lightning safe. 50 kids are packed in a classroom. We don't know what the effects are, whether it's ground current, side flash, but it hardly matters. We need to protect the schools. We need to protect the kids. They tend to be the most substantial buildings in most communities, so it's natural to really pick them. They're the center of activities, they're education centers, they're community centers, and providing a lightning safe place there means that other people can send their kids there when there's a thunderstorm. Community members can go there. Churches, some of the schools that we have protected on a Sunday, every classroom will have a different church meeting in that classroom. Well, this is what I mean by it's more expensive to protect schools in Africa than it may be in other in developed countries. In developed countries, you have one large, typically fairly easy to protect or design protection for building. In Africa, particularly in Uganda, every building, every classroom is a different building. Maybe sometimes there's 2 to 4 classrooms in the building. They have separate buildings for everything. So each one of these buildings, in our experience, it costs almost $4,000 for each one of these buildings with typical materials. Of course, that includes not just the materials, but also the import fees, the transportation, the installation, things like that. So it's really expensive. Probably costs us more to install or to put lightning protection on them than they started out with. Well, remember Mongoyo School. We went up and investigated that when they had 3 deaths and 72 injuries back in October of 2018. We went up there with the intentions of investigating and documenting the school and the injuries so that we could not only find out more information about the injuries, but also raise funds to protect it. Well, the reason that Denmark, the volunteers from Denmark have joined us, is that there's a company in Denmark who has stepped forward and is going to protect this school. So it has 6 classroom buildings. It has a large church, which also doubles as an auditorium. Many schools in Africa started out as church or missionary schools. And unlike in the United States, where we have a separation of religion and state, they have joint public church schools, or there may be some continuing religious involvement with the school. Well, these are the teacher homes. How do we protect these? What do your standards say about protecting a thatched roof? Okay. We have particular challenges in that there's, for Mongoyo in particular, there's no electricity or internet within 20 miles of the school. It's mud brick with a concrete base. We have these thatched roof structures to worry about. In the rocky dry season, it's rocky, and in the dry season, it is really dry. And in the rainy season, we don't want to install because we're up to our knees in mud. Okay. Well, with ACLE Net, the design is free. Our volunteers are giving us their time and expertise and really looking at challenges around the world to determine solutions. I think we're coming up with some novel things. We've decreased the cost of materials. Our Uganda team identifies materials that are locally available that look like the materials that are used in the developed world. Our working group examines the specs, they determine alternative methods, they find out what the coatings on the metals are, all those kinds of things. I am not a lightning protection person. But I've learned a lot about it. So, but don't ask me questions about the specifics and the details. That's what our working group does. They're great. And, you know, when they can, these guys also, guys and gals, also go out and they try to get donations of the local materials, or they'll negotiate the shipping costs to be decreased or given gratis by the shipping companies that they typically use for the rest of their business. Well, the cost of installation, as I said, it also includes costs of transportation to the site, the import and customs fees as part of the materials, local per diems. We try to use local labor whenever we can and expertise under the supervision of 1 or 2 qualified installers and engineers that may fly up from South Africa, again, on their own time. The outcomes, I think we're coming up, and our lightning protection people can tell you more about this, but there's some really cool solutions that we're coming up with. And hopefully these will influence the international standards as well. Many of these people serve on the standards committee, so we hope that the lightning protection standards can expand to address many of the lightning protection challenges that we meet. Thank you very much for attending this.